Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Madison. My name is Ros Woodward. My pronouns are she, her, and I serve on our Worship Associates team, who are lay people who volunteer to assist our called ministers with services. Today, I'm joined by Reverend Kelly Crocker and the worship team of Linda Warren, Drew Collins, Daniel Carnes, and Steve Gregorius. A special thanks to all those volunteering in the many roles today: greeters, ushers, hospitality providers, lay ministers, sound technicians, etc. And at the First Unitarian Society, we question boldly, listen humbly, grow spiritually, act courageously, and love unapologetically. If you're visiting today, welcome. We're so very glad you're with us. And if you'd like more information about FUS, please stop by the welcome table located in the Commons just outside the door there. We hope you'll be able to stay and join us for the coffee hour immediately after the service, also in the Commons. For those connecting with us virtually today, we're glad you're with us. Unfortunately, we're having some technical difficulties. And there'll be, you can, oh no, I can't read my words, my writing here. You can hear the service, or at least most of it. Anything else is in the description below the screen. So I hope you're okay, and we apologize. And now I invite you to join me in a moment of silence to center ourselves and bring ourselves fully into this time as we join together once again in community.
Ancestors who spoke with bravest fire, lend us your senses that we may know another world is on her way, breathed into life with our participation in her creation.
Forebears who led the way where there was at first no way, lend us your persistence, your temerity, your assurance that the moral arc of the universe does indeed bend toward justice.
Ones who went before us, sacrificing for a future not your own, help us to give of ourselves, that the common stones in our hands might be cathedrals of compassion today, halls of restorative justice tomorrow, sheltering walls of beloved community the day after.
It is the time we gather. Let us be thankful and full of praise to be in the company of those who came before, yet are ever in our midst.
And we invite you now to rise in all the ways we do, joining in the words of affirmation as we light our chalice. We tender this flame, opening the book, turning to a page yet to be written, opening a story yet to be told. May we fill this fresh page wisely. May we write a new story into being. May we together inscribe the page with hope. And we invite you to take a moment now to turn and greet those around you.
Now we're going to sing our opening hymn, which is number 1003 in your teal hymnal. Number 1003 in your teal hymnal, Where Do We Come From? If you are worshiping at home today, we encourage you to go to the description of the video. If you don't see that, click on your YouTube icon in the lower right-hand corner, and then in the description you can find your hymn lyrics for number 1003. We'll sing it once together all through, and then we will have this half start and this half follow, and we'll do that twice. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? This side. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we Back to the beginning. Where do we come from? Back to the beginning. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Let's sing that last line together. Where do we come from? Where are we
And I invite anyone who'd like to come up closer for our story to come and join me on the carpet. Good morning. How's your morning? Hi, sweetheart. Oh, hello, darling. It's so good to see you. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the carpet. I feel like we need like a welcome to the carpet song, but that's just me. You want a hug? Absolutely. Bring it in. Oh, it's a huggy kind of morning. It's January. We need hugs in January. How you doing? What happened to weren't we supposed to get snow or something? Yeah. It's rainy. Did you get rain on the way in, on your drive-in? No. You saw some rain when you came out of the car? Me too. You too? Well, depending on your age, I have what could be a trick question for you. How many planets are in our solar system? Xavier, how many planets do we have?
6? I don't know.
How many? Okay, if you're under 20, how many do we have? 8. If you're over 20, how many do we have? 9. I am finding my Pluto people here. So here's the deal. When I was your age, we had 9. It ended in Pluto. See that little dot over there? I want to tell you a story about Pluto today. Do you know who discovered Pluto a long time ago? No, nobody really does, right? Xavier learned this story and has already forgotten it. So good. That happens with our history stories sometime. So today we're going to tell some stories from UU history. And this is a story of a man named Clyde Tombaugh. Okay, so when Clyde was young, when he was your age, he lived on a farm. And every night after he finished his chores, he would do his favorite thing, which was looking up at the stars. Now, have you ever driven out to the country or somewhere where there's not a lot of light and looked up at the sky? Have you ever done that? How many stars do you see if you go out here in the city? 100? So how many would you see if you go out to the country? Yeah, a lot more. 1 million. It looks a trillion. Let's just be clear, I've totally lost control, and I'm okay with it. I hope you are too. I'll be right back. Okay, yes, you saw lots of stars. Just on Wednesday, 6 stars, and you've seen shooting stars. So Clyde would look up. A bunch of stars in a row, flying in a line. They were not blinking. Forget about Clyde. I want to talk about this row of stars. Okay, no. So let's get back to Clyde for a minute. You guys have to go to class eventually. You're just going to hang out with me all day. So Clyde would look up at the sky and he would ask all kinds of questions. Questions like, what is that row of stars that's in a line and not blinking? I don't know if Clyde ever saw anything like that. But, why is Mars red? Why is there life? What kinds of questions do you have about the universe? Yeah. Is there really magic in the world? Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, is there magic in the world, and did magic bring life to us? That is such a beautiful question to ask, especially if you're looking up at the stars. So Clyde asked all these kinds of questions, and the telescope that he had wasn't strong enough to let him see as far as he wanted to see. So he went into the barn, and he looked for all kinds of parts, and he ground mirrors to make them reflective, and his father gave him the shaft of an old car, and Clyde built a powerful telescope. Now he could see much more detail, and when he would see the detail, he would draw pictures of what he saw, and he sent the pictures to some astronomers, and he was asking them questions, but the astronomers were so impressed that they didn't answer his questions. They gave him a job. Clyde hadn't even gone to college yet. He will eventually, but he hadn't at that point. They gave him a job. He moved to New Mexico, and he started working with a scientist called Percival Lowell. And Percival said, I know there is a planet past Neptune, but nobody had been able to find it. So Clyde spent every night in a cold, unheated observatory in the middle of nowhere in New Mexico, and he watched the sky. And one night, when he was 24, Clyde took a photograph of the sky that showed this strange shifting light. He found a planet beyond Neptune. It was named Pluto! Yay, it was named Pluto for the Roman god of the underworld, because Pluto, being that far away from the sun, would be what? Dark and cold, right? Like the underworld or like January. So all his life, Clyde loved learning about the universe. So he found more than 100 asteroids. He discovered a comet. He discovered a supercluster of galaxies. He became an astronomy teacher. And in his own backyard, he built a huge 2-story telescope. And he would invite his students out to use his giant telescope to stare at the night sky. Clyde loved learning and asking questions so much that he and his wife did one other thing in New Mexico. They started a Unitarian Universalist congregation. You knew it was coming, didn't you? You were just waiting for it. Clyde and his wife Patricia started a congregation because they said, much like using a telescope and looking out at the night sky and asking questions, a congregation filled with all these people is another good place to ask questions and to look for answers and to make new discoveries. So what happened? Clyde died a very, very old man back in 1997, and after his death, the scientists discovered new things and decided that Pluto is in fact a dwarf planet. I know. And we could spend the rest of our time together debating that fact. Some of us have feelings about Pluto. But Pluto is now categorized as a dwarf planet. And his wife, Patricia, said that Clyde would have been disappointed about the vote. But the important thing to remember about Clyde and Pluto is that the thing is to keep asking questions and to keep staying curious and to keep discovering new things all the time. So that's the story of Clyde Tombaugh and Pluto. Thank you so much for talking to me about the universe. We're going to sing you out to your classes.
You to rise in body and or in spirit, so we can sing hymn number 317 in the gray hymnal, We Are Not Our Own.
See
Our inspiration today is Here's to You, Ralph Waldo by Patrick Murphy. You've reached across time and found me dozing on an afternoon, reached your hand down and shaken me by the toe until I stir bewildered. Wake up, you cry. The world is waiting to be noticed. The very autumn air vibrant with miracles. The incessant sun prying into every dark space. For you, if you will see it, if you will be it. The deadest of white males, you have climbed long lingers from the pages of a book splayed open on my desk. Swept your arm wide around the random piles, half-read volumes, half-completed projects, half-lived life that is my study, and demanded I seize my life, clear my head of every derivation, even that from the dust of your own mouth, and speak at last my own revelation. So here's to you, Ralph Waldo, dreamer, darer, doer.
The legendary conservationist Jane Goodall is quick to share the reason she always carries with her what she calls her sacred bundle. This is a bundle of seemingly ordinary objects that wouldn't hold any particular meaning to us, but mean a great deal to her. Goodall says, I understand why many of my fellow scientists believe we are spiraling toward global disaster. Still, I have reason for hope. And I collect and always keep with me on my travels symbols that express that hope. Symbols that remind me of stories. The stories that remind me who I am, what matters, and how I want to live my days. This practice originated with indigenous Native American tribes such as the Lakota and Pawnee, who would carry significant artifacts from the tribe's past in a pouch or a bundle, while the artifacts themselves, a carved piece of wood, an animal bone, a feather, might outwardly seem mundane. Each was associated with a rich and meaningful story. Each held a piece of the tribe's history. At ceremonial campfires, the shamans or elders of the tribe would open the bundle, tell, sing, dance the story behind each item. The sum of these stories told the history of the tribe and expressed its deepest values. The stories were told so often that every member of the tribe could repeat them to their families. A few of the items in Goodall's bundle are a feather, a small stone, and a child's stuffed toy. The feather comes from a California condor, a species reduced to only 14 individuals a few years ago. All were captured for breeding, and now there are 40 condors flying free in 4 different release sites. The feather is a story of resilience. She carries a small piece of limestone from the quarry on Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela labored for 18 of his 27 years of imprisonment, and yet emerged with so little bitterness that he could go on to lead his nation from the evil of apartheid into democracy. The rock is a story of the indomitable human spirit. The stuffed toy is a small spotted dog that a 5-year-old child sent to her along with a plastic bag holding a few pennies. The child sent it after seeing a National Geographic special where a young chimpanzee taken from its mother died of grief. The child sent Jane the toy and asked if she could give it to one of the orphan chimps she was caring for to give it comfort and with the pennies, could she buy it some bananas? In that stuffed toy lies the story of hope brought to us through our young ones who know the world they are inhabiting is in terrible shape. And with deep wells of compassion, they reach out in any way they can. As Kelly said last week, our lives are shaped by the stories we tell. Much of how we see ourselves and understand the world is cultivated by our stories. From a young age, we are told the story of where we come from. The immigrant grandfather, the grandmother who fought to be educated like her brothers, the meeting of our parents, the story of our arrival. The stories we hear shape how we see our world and how we find our place in it. And as we age, it becomes our work to craft the stories we tell about our own experiences, ultimately shaping how we see ourselves in this world. Stories connect us, they help us make meaning, they give us insight into another's perspective. Stories engage our imagination, they help us see new possibilities. Jane Goodall's sacred bundle of stories remind her who she is, what matters. They bring her hope when the world seems to present only reasons for despair. Now, as Unitarian Universalists, our faith tradition holds a multitude of stories. Stories of those whose contributions are marked as historically significant, and stories of ordinary UUs who lived out our shared values in the context of their world. I wonder, how might their stories create a sacred bundle for us that helps us remember what it means to live as Unitarian Universalists in this time and in this place in history? What are some of the things that hold our deepest values and remind us of who we are meant to be? So yes, any sermon on history needs props, because I'm going to try to keep you engaged. So the first item I would put in our bundle is a ship. This ship is called the Hand in Hand. And in the year 1770, it carried the lay preacher and Bible scholar John Murray from a life in England to a new world. Murray loved good preaching. And so over the years, he visited every church in London. This is how he became converted to the theology of universalism, that all souls would be reunited with their loving Creator. Unfortunately for Murray, his life took a horrible turn, and after the death of both his wife and young child, he ended up in debtor's prison. He decided upon leaving prison that he would never preach again, he would never talk theology again, but rather he would book passage on the Hand in Hand and sail to a new life away from it all in New York. The boat ran aground in New Jersey instead and became stuck on a sandbar. The captain asked Murray to go ashore for food and water, and Murray ends up at the home of a farmer named Thomas Potter. Potter gave him rations for the crew and invites Murray to come back to his home for dinner that evening. And over dinner, Murray shares his tale of life in England, how he had come to start over in America. Potter, amazed at this tale, declares that Murray is the preacher he has been waiting for. Confused by this statement, Potter explains that he had built a meeting house on his land and that he had invited every traveling preacher to speak there, hoping a preacher would arrive that would teach about a God that made sense to him, a God of love and compassion. Now, Murray protests that life is over. He will never preach again, and that he is on his way to a new life in New York as soon as the winds change. Potter tells him in a famous line that is our one miracle story. The winds will not change, sir, until you preach of a loving God in my meeting house. After Murray goes to bed, he can't sleep. He writes of these fitful nights. I am never preaching again. The winds will change. And after 3 days and 3 nights, the winds had not changed. So on Sunday morning, September 30th, 1770, the first Universalist sermon was delivered in America. Thomas Potter, a Universalist before he even heard John Murray, heard a preacher talking about love instead of an angry God and a fiery hell. It is said that Murray preached, "Go out into the highways and byways of America, your new country. Give the people blanketed with a decaying and crumbling Calvinism something of your new vision. You may possess only a small light, but uncover it, let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of people. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Preach the kindness and everlasting love of God. A ship that reminds us to bring light and hope." The next item I would add to our bundle is a simple piece of woven cloth to share with you the life of a woman who has been almost lost to us, that of Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. Born of free African-American parents in the slave state of Maryland in Baltimore in 1825. Her mother tragically passed away when she was 3, and her uncle and aunt took her in and made sure that she received a formal education. Frances's uncle was the Reverend William Watkins, a well-known activist for Black civil rights in Maryland, and he strongly influenced Frances's intellectual development. Reverend Watkins saw to it that she kept up with her studies at a free school which he himself had founded. And at the age of 14, Frances was employed as a nursemaid in the home of a white family. That family encouraged her to further her education, giving her access to their library, which she greatly enjoyed. She published her first book of poems written while she was a teenager. By 1850, at the age of 25, Frances had achieved some recognition in the African American community as a writer and a teacher. She was hired to be a teacher at a seminary in Ohio, and after a few years, she moved to the city of Philadelphia. For 2 years in Philadelphia, she lived in an underground railroad station where she witnessed the workings of the Underground Railroad and the movement of slaves toward freedom. This experience had a profound effect on her, impacting her writing and her later work as an activist. It was during these years that she first encountered the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia, which became her home church. That same year, she decided to accept an offer from the State Anti-Slavery Society of Maine and became one of their traveling representatives. Her speeches included her prose and her poetry and combined the issues of racism, feminism, and classism. Harper understood the intersectionality of liberation, how we are all woven together at a time when collective salvation was not a widely held or understood idea. In 1866, flanked by white allies Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony at the 11th National Women's Rights Convention in New York City, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper insisted, "We are all bound up together in one great bundle of humanity, and society cannot trample on the weakest of its members without receiving the curse in its own soul." Harper, a free-born Black woman, lived her life using her relative privilege to fight for the freedom of her people, all of her people. This beautifully intersectional abolitionist organized for women's suffrage alongside the ending of slavery and civil rights for all. A cloth woven of many strands to remind us that we need each other and all of us to be free in a world where all can thrive. We are bound up together. And finally, I would add to our bundle this stone heart, a heart representing the life and work of two relatively unknown Unitarians, Lucy Fessenden and Margaret Bernard. During the Reconstruction era, Northern Unitarians began establishing churches and schools in large southern cities. By the early 1900s, the Unitarians began working in more remote areas of the American South, regions marred by decades of poverty and little opportunity. A small and remote town on the coast of North Carolina was one of the beneficiaries of the National Alliance of Unitarian and other liberal Christian women's efforts to provide opportunity, education, social welfare for impoverished communities in the rural South. And in 1905, the Unitarian Lucy Fessenden from Boston arrived in this small community as the first teacher of the Unitarians' Emerton School. Despite the community's resistance of and opposition to Unitarian theology, Lucy integrated herself into the community, cultivating relationships and establishing an excellent school at a time when accessibility to education was incredibly limited. Eventually, more teachers followed, a congregation was established, and with the generosity of supportive Northern Unitarians, the access to knowledge was expanded for many. Education wasn't their only work. They hosted Boy and Girl Scout troops and provided community enrichment opportunities through dances, movies, opportunities to gather. Equally as valuable were their social welfare initiatives. Clothing and food were regularly shipped from the north and made available to all. Though their theology was not accepted and often loudly denounced by the other local pastors, many townspeople knew the Unitarians as a people of generosity. Now, why there were many who contributed to the efforts, the Reverend Margaret Bernard was the most remembered in this small community. The school and Unitarian church thrived in the 6 years she served there. As a female Unitarian minister in the mid-1920s in the rural South, she found a way to be embraced by that community. She focused on the people she served as an extension of what she called, "My theology is just love as justice." The area's local historian Jack Dudley interviewed many who knew her and said she's remembered as a faithful friend, a leader loved by all who knew her. Many people sought her advice in obtaining an education, pursuing a career. She was an influential minister who never lost the personal touch, and 2 local children were set on fire by locals who could no longer tolerate their liberal theology. With a new public school built in the township, the Unitarians decided to end their efforts there. In reflecting on the decision to leave, the last leader of the congregation wrote in a report to the American Unitarian Association, "The tremendous gifts, service, compassion, devotion, and money have been a sacrifice, but not a waste. Numerous individuals were helped through education and obtained opportunities that they otherwise would not have been afforded. It is my belief that love cannot be thrown away, and that the influence of such consecrated people as the Reverend Bernard and many others still exist here as a beneficial undercurrent in the community." At the end of the great experiment in this rural community, many believed that it had failed. But it is the line in that leader's report that speaks to our shared theology. It is still our belief that love cannot be thrown away. Unitarian Universalists, despite the deep distrust in their theology, were still known in that small southern town as a people who fed, clothed, educated, and embraced their neighbors. Their love still tells our story, a heart that reminds us that love is who we are. These are just 3 of our sacred bundle of stories. There are so many more. Stories that remind us of who we are called to be. A ship, a piece of cloth, a heart. The simple items that may not seem like a lot to anyone else, but to our shared faith, they remind us of everything. A ship that calls us to speak our truth, to share our light, to spread a message of hope in a time of despair. A woven cloth that calls to our interdependence and our knowing that we need all of us to survive, that our freedom, our liberation, our lives are bound up with one another. It is a story of our commitment to justice for all, our struggle to create a world where all are free, respected, held in care, safety, and love. And a heart that speaks of a love that cannot and will not be thrown away, a love that transforms, and a love through all that may come remains. Our Unitarian Universalism of today looks different from that of Murray, Harper, Fessenden, even Reverend Bernard. And yet there is a power in knowing that it is from them that we are, that their hope, wisdom, and love lives on in our stories, our community, and our lives. May we move forward carrying them with us as we go out into the world, a world that now more than ever needs their example and our love. May we go forth and make them proud.
I invite you into this time of giving and receiving, where we give freely and generously to this offering, which supports and sustains the work of this community and our outreach offering recipient, who this week is the Unitarian Universalist Association's Disaster Relief Fund, which provides immediate support through grant relief to those impacted by disasters, ensuring resources reach the people and places most in need. Today, we know the fires raging across California are another heartbreaking reminder of how irreplaceable our lives are in the face of the climate crisis. Thanks to overwhelming recent generosity from individuals and congregations, grant funds are available. The need, however, is great and growing. Please give generously. We need one another now more than any other time. There are multiple ways to share your gifts this morning. Baskets are now being passed in the auditorium for cash or checks, or you can donate directly from our website, fusmadison.org. And if for text to give, for those online, you need to text FUS to 73256. We thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we create together.
We gather each week, carrying in our hearts the joys and losses of our days. We share them here knowing they are held in love and support. We light a candle of love and concern for all those being impacted by the wildfires raging in Southern California. May those in danger find shelter and safety. May this natural disaster remind us once again of the dangers of our current climate crisis. May it strengthen our resolve to do what we can to build a world in which everyone, humans and animals and the planet itself, can survive and thrive. We light a candle of grief and gratitude for the life of Marty Dappin. Marty was raised here at FUS and has been a friend of the congregation for many years. Marty passed away on December 15th. A remembrance circle will be held at Bethel Lutheran Church this Thursday at 12:30. We send our condolences to her sisters, their families, and her community. We light a candle of celebration for moving through difficult emotions. And we light a candle of healing for Suzanne Butchko as she recovers from RSV under the watchful care of Julia, Cheshire, and Ed, and we send them all our love. We light one final candle for all those joys and sorrows, hopes and dreams that remain unspoken in our hearts. I invite you now to turn with me in meditation and prayer with these words from Liz Weber. Spirit of life, help us to be present with all that life brings, our deepest sorrows and our greatest joys, so that we can truly live, engaging fully in our own life and in our community. Spirit of community, help us know how linked we are, how each one of our cares touches us all. Help us to ask for support when we are in need and offer our support to others when we are able, so that we may rest in the solace of one another's love. Spirit of love, help us to love our neighbor as we love ourselves, so that we might fully embody love and resist hatred. Spirit of resistance, help us to stick up for what is right, even when we are tired or afraid. Help us to dream of the world as it should be and act to bring that world about. Help us to find hope each day. Spirit of hope, help us through this day and every day. Help us to be present for all that is our life. For all this we pray. Amen, and blessed be.
Now I invite you to rise in body and or in spirit so we can sing together our closing hymn, number 1028 in the Teal hymnal, 1028, The Fire of Commitment.
Sets our mind
those who came before us, we offer gratitude and thanks. May their memories be a blessing. May we feel surrounded by their love. As we go forth from this time and place, let us be inspired by their courage, their wisdom, and their dreams. Let us honor them by doing the work of living boldly, loving mightily, and creating a heaven here on earth. Amen. Blessed be. Go in peace, and please be seated for the postlude.